It was a dark September night in 1961 when Barney and Betty Hill were returning to Portsmouth after a vacation in Canada. As they traveled along a deserted highway through the White Mountains, a light appeared in the sky that seemed to follow their car. The object moved unpredictably and grew larger as they continued down the road. Concerned, Barney stopped the car and stepped out with his binoculars to take a closer look. He spotted a massive disc-shaped craft hovering at low altitude. As he approached, an overwhelming sense of fear came over him, and he sprinted back to the car. Pressing the accelerator, he sped down the highway, but the light descended and forced them to stop. The enormous craft, measuring roughly 100 feet across, hovered directly in front of them. Through his binoculars, Barney saw several windows with humanoid figures visible inside. When they finally arrived home, the Hills noticed strange details. Their watches had stopped, the straps on the binoculars were broken, and Betty's dress was torn. In search of answers, they turned to a psychiatrist specializing in regression hypnosis, Dr. Benjamin Simon. Under hypnosis, Betty recalled seeing a map that she believed depicted interstellar travel routes. Years later, some researchers suggested that the map corresponded to the Zeta Reticuli star system. She also described undergoing a physical examination during which a needle was inserted into her abdomen. Meanwhile, Barney reported seeing humanoid beings with large heads and oversized eyes. The creatures of Cisco Grove. On September 4, 1964, deep in the forests of Cisco Grove, California, a hunter experienced a night of absolute terror. Young Donald Shrum had ventured into the woods in search of deer. When darkness fell, he realized he had lost his way. As night approached, he decided to climb a tall tree to protect himself from predators. While settling onto a sturdy branch, something unusual caught his attention in the sky. A distant light appeared, moving slowly in his direction. At first, he assumed it was a helicopter, but as it drew closer, the glow revealed a metallic, disc-shaped craft. Moments later, humanoid figures emerged beneath the tree where he was perched. Short in stature, thin-bodied, with glowing red eyes. Beside them, Shrum described a towering robotic figure with luminous eyes. The creatures attempted to climb the tree, but struggled to reach his position. In desperation, he ignited several flares to drive them away, yet they remained undeterred. One of the beings raised a strange tube and released a gas, causing him to feel dizzy. Terrified, Shrum fired all the flares he had left and shot arrows from his bow, yet the creatures appeared unaffected by his attacks. For hours, the humanoids persisted in their attempts to climb higher as he fought to remain conscious. Finally, just before dawn, the entities withdrew, and the craft vanished into the sky. Exhausted and shaken, the hunter climbed down and made his way to the road, where his hunting party eventually found him. The Ilkley Moore entity photograph. On a cold December morning in 1987, Philip Spencer, a former police officer and amateur photographer, set out for a walk across the desolate Yorkshire moors. As he wandered, he noticed movement in the distance, a small humanoid figure moving quickly. Feeling uneasy, Spencer raised his camera and captured a photograph of the being. The figure appeared to be heading toward a metallic, disc-shaped object hovering just above the ground, emitting a faint humming sound. Moments later, the craft vanished into the fog. Confused, Spencer decided to return home, only to discover that his watch had jumped forward by 2 hours. Although blurred, the photograph appears to depict a small humanoid with elongated arms and an oversized head. Skeptics have argued that the figure could be a person or an animal, though no definitive explanation has ever been reached. The creatures of Emilchin. On May 10, 1978, in the small village of Emilchin, Poland, an unexplained event took place. It was a sunny day when Jan Volsky, a local farmer, was returning home in his horse-drawn cart along a quiet forest path. Along the way, he noticed two unusual figures walking beside his cart. The beings appeared humanoid but were short in stature, dressed in tight-fitting suits with greenish-toned skin. They observed him calmly, remaining silent yet radiating an unusual sense of peace. Without showing fear, Volsky continued his journey as the creatures climbed onto the cart without uttering a word. Moments later, the farmer noticed a large, oval-shaped silver craft hovering over a clearing in the forest. The beings guided him toward the object, where a platform lifted him into its interior. Inside, he encountered a simple space with smooth walls, bathed in soft ambient light. Without speaking, the entities conducted an examination using advanced instruments. Afterward, they escorted him back to the platform, gently lowering him to the ground. Before departing, the beings made a subtle gesture of farewell as the craft slowly ascended. With a smooth motion, the object disappeared into the sky, leaving Volsky alone in the forest. Later, strange impressions were discovered in the soil at the site where the craft had hovered. Local authorities took an interest in the case, and Volsky underwent extensive psychological evaluations. Experts unanimously concluded that he was an honest individual, showing no signs of mental instability or deception. The Phoenix Lights. On March 13, 1997, under the clear skies of Phoenix, Arizona, an event unfolded that left thousands in awe. The night was peaceful until a formation of lights appeared, stretching across the sky in a massive V-shaped pattern. Glowing in an amber hue, the lights moved silently, defying explanation. Some witnesses described them as separate orbs, while others insisted they were part of a single enormous craft. Reports flooded in from across Phoenix, with countless residents claiming to have witnessed the mysterious display. Police stations, Luke Air Force Base, and local news outlets were inundated with calls from concerned citizens. Initially, military officials denied any knowledge of the phenomenon, leaving the public confused. Days later, Arizona Governor Fife Symington held a press conference featuring an individual dressed as an alien, attempting to dismiss the event as a joke. Years later, however, Symington admitted that he had personally witnessed the lights and described the incident as otherworldly. The Air Force later claimed that the lights were flares released during training exercises at Luke Air Force Base. Many witnesses rejected this explanation, arguing that the lights they observed did not behave like conventional flares. The Ubatuba Incident. In September 1957, on the Brazilian beach of Ubatuba, a group of local fishermen were enjoying a sunny afternoon when their peaceful day was suddenly interrupted. A bright object appeared in the sky, rapidly approaching the shoreline. It was a disc-shaped craft, clearly out of control. Descending at incredible speed, it exploded in a blinding flash just before reaching the water. The fishermen watched in shock as the UFO disintegrated into thousands of fragments over the sea and along the coastline. Rushing to the impact site, they discovered small metallic pieces scattered across the sand. The material was unlike anything they had encountered before. One of the fishermen collected several fragments and later sent them to a journalist in Sao Paulo. The samples were analyzed in laboratories, yielding remarkable results. Tests confirmed that the debris consisted of magnesium with an exceptionally high level of purity. Over the years, further investigations were conducted, yet no definitive explanation has ever been reached regarding what truly happened that day in Ubatuba. The Tehran UFO Incident. On September 19, 1976, something occurred in the skies over Iran that left the country's military baffled. It was a clear night when Tehran's Air Traffic Control Center began receiving numerous reports from citizens describing an unusual light overhead. Changing colors and moving at extraordinary speeds, the object performed maneuvers that exceeded the capabilities of conventional aircraft. Eventually, the Iranian Air Force decided to dispatch an F-4 Phantom II fighter jet to investigate. As the pilot approached the glowing anomaly, he was stunned by its erratic movements. It accelerated rapidly and changed direction with impossible precision. Suddenly, the aircraft systems failed, the instruments went dark, and radio communications were lost. With no operational controls, the pilot had no choice but to retreat, at which point the aircraft systems mysteriously came back online. Shortly afterward, a second F-4 was launched to continue the interception mission. As it neared the object, the pilot observed a beam of light projecting directly toward his aircraft. Panicked, he attempted to launch a missile in self-defense, but all systems simultaneously failed. The main object appeared to be accompanied by smaller lights, which moved independently while circling the F-4. Finally, the unidentified ship and its companions made a rapid ascent, disappearing from the area and leaving Iranian pilots unable to pursue them. Detailed reports were prepared, and the incident was officially reported to American authorities. The UFO of Valençol, Maurice Masse. On a bright morning, July 1, 1965, in the French countryside, Maurice Masse, a man known for his seriousness and deep connection to the land, was tending his fields when a sharp buzzing sound suddenly broke the peaceful silence. Looking up, Masse was astonished to see a metallic gray, oval-shaped craft descending from the sky. The object landed gently, supported by 4 thin legs. Intrigued, he cautiously approached and noticed a small door sliding silently open. From inside emerged 2 creatures, each about 3 feet tall, with large heads and thin bodies, dressed in tight-fitting suits. Their large eyes radiated an eerie, almost hypnotic calm. One of the creatures raised a small device and pointed it at Mass, who was immediately overcome by intense drowsiness. Although paralyzed, he remained fully conscious as he watched the entities methodically inspect the field, moving around the craft with precise, deliberate steps. After a few minutes, the beings returned to their ship. The craft rose, emitting the same buzzing sound, before disappearing at astonishing speed. The incident was investigated by the National Gendarmerie and specialists in aerial phenomena. Researchers who visited the site later found unusual ground markings, as if the soil had been exposed to extreme heat. Years passed before vegetation fully recovered, yet the lavender plants never regained their former vigor. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich. On October 21, 1978, young pilot Frederick Valentich took off from Melbourne in his Cessna 182L. While flying over the Bass Strait, something unexpected caught his attention. A light appeared in the sky. Concerned, he contacted air traffic control, reporting that an unidentified object was approaching. Valentich described seeing a large, elongated craft with no wings, no visible engines, and flashing green lights. Dispatchers assured him there were no other aircraft in the area. Valentich then stated that the object seemed to be playing with him, flying above him and following his every move. Shortly afterward, he reported that the craft was circling directly above him and insisted that it was not an airplane, just moments before the transmission abruptly cut off. His Cessna vanished from radar, as if swallowed by the sea. A massive search operation was launched, but no trace of the aircraft or its pilot was ever found. To this day, no one knows what Valentich truly witnessed or what happened in his final moments. The creatures of Kofu. In the quiet town of Kofu, Japan, on February 23, 1975, two young boys experienced an encounter that would capture national attention. Masato Kawano and Katsuhira Yamahata, both 7 years old, were playing in a field near their homes when a luminous object suddenly appeared in the sky and slowly descended. Fascinated, the boys watched as it settled in a nearby vineyard. The craft was disc-shaped, with a dome on top, emitting a pulsating orange light. Overwhelmed by curiosity and awe, they ran toward the mysterious object. As they approached, two small creatures emerged from the craft. The beings were short, with brownish skin, large heads, indistinct facial features, elongated ears, and long arms. They wore glowing uniforms. Because of their strange appearance and awkward movements, the boys believed they were demons. One of the creatures held a strange device that emitted a beam of light in their direction. Terrified, the boys tried to flee but found themselves unable to look away. One of the beings reached out and touched Katsuhira's shoulder, instantly paralyzing him. Moments later, the creatures returned to their ship, which rose quickly before vanishing into the sky. The Cash Landrum Incident. On December 29, 1980, on a rural highway in Texas, Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's grandson Colby were returning home after a pleasant dinner. As they passed through a dense pine forest, a bright glow appeared in the sky. Frightened, they stopped to take a closer look. A massive diamond-shaped object descended in front of them. Hovering at low altitude, it emitted flames toward the ground, producing a deafening roar. Betty stepped out of the car to get a better view, but the intense heat forced her to retreat. Suddenly, nearly 20 helicopters appeared, seemingly escorting the object. As the UFO rose, the helicopters followed it until both disappeared into the distance. Still shaken, the three continued their journey, but the encounter left lasting consequences. Soon afterward, Betty, Vicky, and Colby developed severe symptoms, including skin burns, nausea, and hair loss. The incident was reported to authorities, but the Air Force denied any involvement or knowledge of the helicopters. The wrecked ship of Koyami. On August 25, 1974, deep in the Chihuahuan Desert of Mexico, an event occurred that remains shrouded in mystery. It was a clear night when Mexican military radar detected an unidentified object entering the country's airspace. Moving at incredible speed, the craft appeared out of control, heading toward the mountainous region near Koyami, a small desert town. At the same time, a civilian aircraft took off from El Paso, Texas, flying south. Shortly thereafter, air traffic controllers lost contact with both the unidentified object and the civilian plane. At sunrise, search teams discovered the wreckage of the civilian aircraft, along with something far more extraordinary. Near the crash site lay a disc-shaped metallic craft, partially embedded in the ground. Although it showed signs of a high-velocity impact, its structure remained remarkably intact. Mexican military forces secured the area. setting up a perimeter to examine the wreckage and determining that the craft was composed of an unknown material. Authorities decided to transport the object to a military facility for further study. Before they could proceed, unmarked helicopters suddenly appeared, descending onto the site. Men in military uniforms without visible insignia swiftly took control of the operation. The Mexican team was replaced, and both the craft and the downed aircraft were discreetly removed. The Mexican government never issued an official explanation. Some speculate that American forces intervened, fearing the object contained alien technology. The Allagash kidnappings. In August 1976, 4 friends embarked on an adventure in the remote wilderness of northern Maine, United States. They were artists and nature lovers, seeking inspiration in the peaceful surroundings of Allagash Lake. On the night of August 20th, the group set out in a canoe for a quiet evening of fishing. As they sat in silence, one of them noticed a light on the horizon. At first it resembled a distant star, but it soon became clear that it was something much larger and much closer. The glowing object moved toward them, steadily increasing in size, revealing a silent presence hovering above the lake. Panicked, the men frantically paddled toward shore, but the object tracked their movement, engulfing the canoe in a powerful beam of light. In an instant, everything went dark. They had no memory of how they reached shore or how much time had passed. The campfire they had left burning was reduced to embers, suggesting far more time had elapsed than they remembered. In the years that followed, all 4 men experienced recurring nightmares connected to that night. Through their dreams, they recalled being taken aboard a craft and subjected to medical examinations by emotionless humanoid beings. Finally, in 1988, they sought professional help and underwent regression hypnosis to recover the missing memories. What emerged were strikingly detailed accounts of examination rooms, advanced instruments, and beings with large, black eyes watching them in silence. The real cause of the incident remains unknown. Some claim it was a weather balloon, while others insist it was a genuine UFO. The giant Yukon UFO. On the night of December 11, 1996, something extraordinary occurred in the skies over the Yukon Territory in Canada. Nearly 30 witnesses from various locations reported seeing an unidentified flying object. Its size was staggering. Some compared it to a football field, its lights bathing the night landscape in an ominous glow. Moving silently, the object glided at low altitude over roads and lakes. Some witnesses described the vessel as having a boomerang or V-shaped form. As it passed overhead, it completely blocked out the stars. Authorities launched an investigation, but no explanation was ever found for what had been seen. Craft and creatures in Wigan. A report detailing this sighting was later declassified by the UK Ministry of Defence. In 2003, in the town of Wigan, Lancashire, an event unfolded that left both investigators and residents perplexed. One witness claimed to have seen 17 spacecraft flying in a V-shaped formation. The objects were oblong in shape with wings and varying colors. The most astonishing detail came from the witness's statement. He reported seeing alien creatures with green skin and cream-colored bellies. The close encounter in Cusick. This is one of the UFO reports published by the French government in 2007. On a bright August 29, 1967, 13-year-old Francois and his 9-year-old sister Anne-Marie were herding cattle near Cusick, a small village in central France. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and everything seemed calm until they noticed something unusual on the horizon. Francois first mistook the figures for children playing, but upon closer inspection, he realized they were 4 small creatures with black skin and large heads. The siblings watched in shock as the creatures moved around a floating metallic craft. It was spherical, with a dome on top that reflected sunlight with almost blinding intensity. Frozen with fear, Francois and Anne-Marie stood motionless when one of the creatures turned toward them and emitted a high-pitched sound. In an instant, the figures floated upward and vanished into the spherical craft. Without making a sound, the object began to spin before shooting straight up into the sky. Terrified, the children ran back to the village to report what they had witnessed. Later, authorities investigating the scene detected a strong sulfur-like odor at the location where the craft was believed to have landed. The colossal craft of Corbridge. On February 28, 1999, along a road near Corbridge in the United Kingdom, witnesses reported an astonishing sight. A massive object appeared in the night sky, described as a craft the size of 10 football fields with a distinct arrowhead shape. Its sheer scale and unusual design made this case particularly remarkable. The Falcon Lake UFO. On May 20, 1967, on the shores of Falcon Lake in Canada, an event occurred that left one man permanently scarred, both physically and emotionally. It was a crisp morning when Stefan Michalak, an amateur geologist and nature enthusiast, set out to explore the area in search of minerals. While examining rock formations, an unusual noise broke the silence. Looking up, he saw two disc-shaped objects descending toward a clearing, one of which landed smoothly on the rocky surface, while the other hovered briefly before flying away. Believing it to be an experimental aircraft, Michalak cautiously approached, feeling intense heat radiating from the object. Without warning, a hatch opened, revealing an interior filled with flashing lights and mechanical sounds. When the craft began to spin, a jet of scorching air burst from a vent, striking Michalak in the chest and throwing him backward. Investigators later discovered traces of radiation at the landing site, along with a significant magnetic anomaly. The Exeter Incident. In the early hours of September 3, 1965, in the small town of Exeter, in the United States, 18-year-old Norman Muscarello was walking home along a deserted road when he noticed a massive, luminous, oval-shaped UFO silently circling overhead. Terrified, he ran to the nearest police station. His genuine fear convinced Officer Eugene Bertrand to escort him back to the scene. Upon arrival, the officer also witnessed the object hovering over a nearby field, gliding silently. Moments later, the UFO moved toward the patrol car, stopping close by and flooding the interior with intense light. Its movements were chaotic and far beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. Eventually, the object moved away and vanished into the night. The Air Force later dismissed the sighting, attributing it to aircraft lights or atmospheric refraction. The Kenneth Arnold Case. On June 24, 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying over the Cascade Mountains in Washington under clear skies with perfect visibility. In the distance, flashes of metallic light caught his attention. He observed 9 disc-shaped objects flying in formation, reflecting sunlight like mirrors. Arnold estimated their speed at approximately 1,700 miles per hour, an astonishing velocity for that era. The objects had no visible propulsion systems and moved erratically, like saucers skipping across water. Within seconds, they disappeared behind a mountain range. Arnold later described the sighting to reporters, comparing the motion to flying saucers, a phrase that ignited a global fascination with UFOs. The UFO in Kecksburg. On the afternoon of December 9, 1965, a luminous object streaked across the sky over Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, leaving a fiery trail behind. While some initially believed it to be a meteor, witnesses reported that the object appeared to maneuver before descending into a nearby forest. Several observers described it as bell-shaped, adorned with strange markings resembling hieroglyphs. Military personnel quickly sealed off the area, blocking civilians from approaching. Some residents claimed to have seen the object loaded onto a military truck. Officials later stated it was a meteor, though no independent verification was allowed. The Levelland UFO. On November 2, 1957, the town of Levelland, Texas, became the site of a series of unusual UFO encounters. Around 11 p.m., 2 young men, Pedro Salcedo and Joe Salas, were driving along a dark highway when a luminous object appeared overhead, surrounded by a bluish glow. Their truck's engine suddenly died as the object hovered above them. When it vanished into the distance, the engine restarted. Other witnesses reported similar incidents involving electrical failures. An Air Force investigation later attributed the events to atmospheric phenomena. The creatures of Broad Haven. On February 4, 1977, in the Welsh village of Broad Haven, 14 children ran into a field behind their school during recess. Their game was interrupted when an elongated silver craft with a dome on top landed nearby. The children then witnessed a humanoid figure standing near the vessel, dressed in a tight metallic suit and moving slowly as if surveying the area. Although teachers initially dismissed the story, the consistency of the children's accounts led to serious consideration. Thus ends this fascinating journey through the history of UFO encounters and alleged interactions with extraterrestrial beings, a phenomenon that may still hold unexpected surprises for the future. We are left with thought-provoking questions. Could some modern technologies originate from reverse-engineered alien craft? Are we truly prepared for contact with beings from other worlds? And would our society be able to handle the truth? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories, unexplained cases, and deep dives into UFO encounters and extraterrestrial mysteries. More incredible content is coming very soon.